All right, so are you ready to like dive into this whole world of Japanese philosophy with me today?
Always up for a deep dive.
Okay, so we're tackling this idea that Nishida Kitaro, was he the first original thinker in Japan's philosophical history?
Hmm.
And our source for this deep dive is Richard Stone's new book. It's called NUW, The Origins of Modern Japanese Philosophy.
Okay.
So do you think he really was the first? Or is there more to this whole like originality thing?
Well, that's the question, right? I mean, the standard narrative, it feels so neat, so tidy. You have Nishida, he publishes his Inquiry into the Good in 1911. Boom!
Right.
Massively influential work. And suddenly he's this revolutionary figure, breaking away from, centuries of just translating or blending Western and Eastern ideas.
Right, like Japanese philosophy before him was just, I don't know, playing catch-up or something, not like forging its own path. I think Stone even quotes that writer, Nakachomen, who just flat out said there was no real philosophy in Japan until the 20th century. So, like, how does Stone challenge that? Where does he even begin?
Well, he dives deep into the Meiji period. So that's the era leading up to Nishida. And, you know, even though Nishida's praised for his originality, he himself admitted he was influenced by figures, like his own teachers, actually, Inui Tetsujiro and Motoori Ujider, especially when it comes to their ideas about, meaning and the self.
Oh, interesting. So he wasn't like claiming to have, sprung fully formed from the void or something.
Yeah.
But there's this really striking anecdote in the book, and it's about Idui Idrish. Can you tell me about him and his impact on Nishida?
Yes. This is where it gets really exciting, honestly.
Okay.
So young Nishida, he was deeply affected, like really deeply affected by Enri's book, An Evening of Philosophical Conversation. Okay, but this wasn't just some dry, philosophical treatise.
Yeah.
Enri used dialogues to really explore complex philosophical ideas.
Oh.
And it just blew Nishida's mind.
Wait, hold on. Dialogues? Like, are we talking different characters, like arguing different points of view?
Exactly.
That's wild, especially for that time period. That's such a unique approach.
And Stone argues that this dialogical approach, this kind of like wrestling with different perspectives, is crucial to understanding how Nishida formed his own ideas. It wasn't about isolation, It was about engaging in these lively debates that were happening all around him at the time. In fact, Stone makes this point that pretty much every single element of Nishida's famous Inquiry, the book he's known for, it has roots in those Meiji-era discussions.
Wow. That completely changes the picture, doesn't it? It's like suddenly you see all these hidden connections. Okay, but I have to know more about this Inui Enri character.
Yeah.
He sounds like a total rock star.
Oh, yeah.
What else was he known for?
Well, he was a major figure. Like, he founded Japan's first philosophy journal, was a prominent voice for Buddhist reform, like public intellectual of his day,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but his work has gotten a bit of a bad rap.
Really?
Dismissed by some as just like merely syncretic.
Syncretic. So, meaning what? Like just mashing together Eastern and Western ideas without any real depth?
Yeah, that's the critique.
Huh.
But Stone pushes back against this hard. He points to An Evening of Philosophical Conversation as evidence.
Okay, so how does that book, prove Enri was more than just a philosophical DJ?
Right.
What's so special about these dialogues?
Okay, so imagine this. Imagine characters representing these extreme viewpoints, right?
Okay.
Like hardcore idealism versus staunch materialism, going head to head in these witty, engaging conversations.
Okay.
And through their back and forth, Enri systematically picks apart each extreme position, exposes their flaws and limitations.
So he's not blending, he's deconstructing. He's showing that clinging to one side is a surefire way to miss the bigger picture.
Exactly. And this right here is where we see that direct link back to Nishida.
Yeah.
They're both grappling with this huge question, this huge philosophical question. How do you even describe reality, without resorting to these limited, these biased categories?
Right, because if your starting point is flawed, how can you trust your conclusions?
Exactly.
It's like trying to build a house on sand.
Oh.
So they're both after the same thing, just
Yeah.
coming at it from different angles.
Precisely. And they both latch on to this concept of phenomena soka reality.
Phenomena soka reality.
Yeah.
Okay, that might sound a little complicated, but bear with me.
I'll break it down.
Okay, please explain it like I'm 5.
All right, so imagine you're experiencing something directly, Okay. You're seeing a beautiful sunset. You're hearing a piece of music.
Okay.
Those are the phenomena, right? The things that we perceive.
Right.
But here's the twist. For both Inui and Nishida, those phenomena, they aren't separate from reality itself. They're intimately connected.
Soku meaning inseparable.
Exactly.
So it's not like our minds are just like creating the sunset out of thin air.
Right.
It's that the sunset, our experience of it, is like an inseparable part of reality as a whole.
Exactly. They arrive at this non-dualistic understanding. Reality isn't split into like mind and matter, subject and object. It's all woven together.
Woven together.
It's all one big interconnected thing.
I think I'm starting to get it.
Yeah.
But like, if their ultimate goal was the same, what made their approaches so different? If they're both looking at this phenomena soku reality idea.
Right. Well, think of it this way. Inoue, he's like a really skilled debater.
Okay.
Okay, so he uses dialogue in this thing called negative argumentation to kind of expose the weaknesses of these like extreme viewpoints.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So he shows you what doesn't work to get you thinking outside those boxes.
Okay.
Nishida, on the other hand, he's more of a system builder.
Okay.
So he takes these non-dualistic ideas and he creates this whole philosophical system around them. And at the heart of that is this concept of pure experience.
Ah, yes. Pure experience. That's the one that I feel like is going to be on the quiz later. So, like, what exactly is pure experience in Nishida's view?
It's about getting to, like, the rawest, the most fundamental level of reality.
Okay.
The kind of experience that exists before our minds, like, slap concepts and judgments onto things.
Okay, so, like, give me an example.
Okay.
What experience are we even talking about?
Think about, like, the feeling of warmth on your skin from the sun, or the sensation of a cool breeze.
Yeah.
In those initial moments before you even think sun or breeze, you know.
Yeah.
There's just this pure sensation, the raw data of experience.
Right.
That's what Nishida's trying to get at.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But if pure experience is like preconceptual, how can it be meaningful? Like, don't we need concepts in order to like understand, interpret, make sense of the world around us?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
It's like asking, you know, does a tree falling in the forest make a sound if no one's there to hear it?
Right.
And it's something that Nishida grappled with, just like his own teacher, Motora Yujiro. Now, Motora, he was a fascinating figure in his own right. A pioneering Japanese psychologist who was also trying to understand this link between experience and meaning.
Okay, so what was Motora's take? Did he think that pure experience could be meaningful, like, all on its own?
So Motora, he believed that meaning it emerges over time through the connections that we make between different experiences.
Okay.
So think of it like building a web, right?
Yeah.
Each individual experience is like a single strand. And as we encounter more and more, we start weaving them together, creating this more complex, more meaningful tapestry.
Okay, so it's not like meaning is inherent in any single moment. It's that it arises from how we connect the dots between all those moments. That's interesting. So it's like meaning comes from the relationships that we build between our experiences.
Exactly. And to understand both Motora and Nishida, we have to remember, like, the intellectual context.
Yeah.
They were both influenced by Western psychologists like Wundt and William James,
Of course.
who were exploring very, very similar ideas. But here's where Nishida takes, like, this giant leap forward.
Ooh, a plot twist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm ready. What's Nishida doing?
So Nishida argues that meaning isn't just something that our minds, like, add to the equation later on. He says it's already there. It's woven into the very fabric of reality, like a potential within the structure of pure experience itself.
Hold on. Are we saying that the world is like inherently meaningful even before we even try to make sense of it?
That's precisely what Nishida is suggesting.
Wow.
Yeah. He believed that what we perceive as like universal concepts, redness, roundness, beauty, they're not just like these abstract ideas cooked up by our minds. He saw them as real patterns, embedded in the structure of experience itself, waiting to be realized.
Whoa. So he's saying these universals are like blueprints.
Yeah.
That are like built into the universe itself.
Okay.
And our experiences are like those blueprints coming to life.
That's a great way to put it.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, of course, this kind of thinking can get pretty out there.
Yeah.
Stone even mentions a contemporary critic of Nishida, Takahashi Satomi, who argued that Nishida never quite, distinguished between like the objective facts of experience versus the meaning that we assign to them.
So even back then, people were debating, like, what is the nature of reality? Is meaning something we discover or something that we create?
Exactly.
It's so interesting.
But this debate is important because it gets to the heart of what makes Nishida's philosophy so fascinating, right? He's grappling with these huge questions. He's building on the work of his predecessors, but he's also pushing the boundaries of what philosophy can even be.
It's really cool. This is kind of reminding me of something you touched on earlier. We've talked a lot about, pure experience.
Right.
But what about the self in all this?
Right.
How did Nishida see, like, our individual identities fitting into this whole grand scheme of things?
That's where things get even more interesting. So, remember that idea of a non-dualistic reality that we discussed?
Yeah.
Well, Nishida believed this applied to the self as well. He didn't see our individual selves as like these isolated islands, but as deeply interconnected, ultimately like part of a larger universal consciousness.
Okay, so it's like that idea of the drop of water returning to the ocean.
Yes.
Losing its individual identity,
Yeah.
but becoming part of something much, much vaster.
That's a good analogy. And what's fascinating is that this wasn't some radical brand new idea that Nishida just pulled out of thin air.
Right.
Stone actually connects this back to a broader trend among Meiji-era thinkers.
Okay.
This search for meaning beyond like just individual pursuits. And one figure who really exemplifies this is Miyake Setsure.
Oh, right. Yeah, you mentioned him earlier when we were talking about like influences on Nishida. So how did Miyake's worldview connect to this idea of a greater self?
Oh, right. Yeah, you mentioned him earlier when we were talking about like influences on Nishida. So how did Miyake's worldview connect to this idea of a greater self?
Yeah, Miyake, he was all about this idea of the universe as like one giant interconnected organism. He even compared individual humans to cells within a larger body.
So just like cells work together to like form organs and ultimately a whole being, humans for Miyake, we're all just part of this larger cosmic organism.
Exactly.
That's a pretty wild concept when you think about it. Where does God fit into all of this, both for Miyake and for Nishida?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for Miyake, it seems like, the universe itself was kind of like God, like the ultimate source of truth, goodness, beauty. It all lay in this interconnectedness of everything.
Okay.
Nishida's a little trickier.
Okay.
He does use the term God.
Okay. But Stone suggests that, he might not be using it in a traditional religious way.
Okay, now I'm really curious. How does Nishida describe God, if not in like a traditional sense?
Well, he uses phrases, like the unity of the universe, the foundation of love and joy. He talks about our individual spirits seeking this greater unity, this great self that encompasses like everything.
So it sounds like he's tapping into this like deep human longing for connection, for transcendence, but maybe grounding it in like the very nature of reality itself.
That's one way to interpret it, and it's powerful stuff, but it also raises some, thorny questions. Stone highlights this double unity problem that some critics have, pointed out.
Double unity. What's that all about?
Okay, so if we have this like smaller unity of the individual self, right?
Okay.
And then this larger unity of the universal consciousness,
Yeah.
How do they relate?
Right.
Does one create the other? Which comes first?
It's like the chicken and the egg all over again.
Exactly. And this isn't just like an abstract philosophical puzzle. Like some critics worried that this kind of thinking might actually undermine individual freedom and autonomy.
Oh, okay. I see. Like if we're all just expressions of this like larger universal consciousness, do we really have any say in like who we are, what we become?
That's the worry. But Stone argues that Nishida, he was very aware of this tension and actually took pains to, avoid that kind of deterministic thinking.
So how did he try to find that balance then between like the individual and the universal?
Well, he emphasizes that the universal isn't some like separate entity that's, imposed on us from outside.
Yeah.
He says, and this is a key quote, apart from the individual, there is no universal.
So the universal can only express itself through individual experiences.
Right.
That almost makes it more powerful, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Like each of us is this like unique expression of this larger force.
Exactly. And it gets to the heart of Nishida's project, really. He's trying to show how these seemingly contradictory ideas, the individual and the universal freedom and interconnectedness, can actually coexist.
Yeah.
And even enhance each other.
I feel like we've covered so much ground today.
Yeah.
But this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive, I have to say.
Yeah.
I feel like we've really challenged that kind of I don't know, simplistic narrative of Nishida as this lone genius.
Right.
Who just single-handedly created, like, original Japanese philosophy.
Yeah.
He was obviously part of this much, much larger conversation.
Absolutely.
Drawing on these really rich intellectual traditions of the Meiji era.
Yeah, and that's what makes studying philosophy so rewarding, honestly. It's not about, memorizing names and dates.
Right.
It's about tracing those threads of influence, seeing how ideas build on each other over time.
It's like a giant puzzle.
Yes.
Each piece only makes sense in relation to, all the others.
Exactly. And Stone's book, it's like finding a new corner piece. That helps us see this bigger picture of Japanese philosophy in a whole new light.
So for anyone listening who's, like, fascinated by Nishida, Stone's book is definitely a must-read.
Yeah.
But it also makes you wonder, like, how often do we do this with these original thinkers, right?
Yeah.
We simplify their stories.
Yeah.
We miss those hidden connections, those influences that shaped their ideas.
It's so easy to fall into that trap, especially in our, fast-paced, information-saturated world.
Totally.
But as we've seen today, like, reality is often much more nuanced, much more fascinating.
It's like that saying, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. So the next time you hear someone hailed as like the first or the only, remember Nishida Kitaro?
Right.
Remember those Meiji roots? There's always more to the story.
Always. And who knows? Those hidden connections, they might just lead to the most surprising aha moments.